Russia's fate has long been steered by dominant leaders whose ambition reshaped empires and rewrote history. From Peter the Great's ruthless modernization to Stalin's industrial terror and Putin's 21st century power consolidation, these rulers didn't just govern, they redefined Russia's place in the world. Their legacies are marked by monumental expansion, sweeping reform, and enduring controversy, each a force that changed the course of nations. Catherine Thuy, 1725 to 1727. Catherine I emerged from humble beginnings to become Russia's first female ruler. As Peter the Great's second wife, she continued his vision after his death in 1725. Though her reign lasted only 2 years, Catherine established the Supreme Privy Council, a governing body that would influence Russian politics for generations. This administrative structure solidified Russia's transition from czardom to empire, ensuring continuity during a potentially destabilizing succession period. Ivan the Terrible, 1547 to 1584. Ivan IV, known as the Terrible, became the first crowned czar of all Russia. His reign witnessed significant territorial expansion through the annexation of Kazan and Astrakhan, effectively doubling Russia's size and incorporating diverse ethnic territories into the growing empire. Ivan created Russia's first standing army, the Streltsy, modernizing military capabilities. However, his legacy remains complex due to his implementation of the Oprichnina, essentially Russia's first secret police, which unleashed a reign of terror against perceived opponents, particularly the nobility. This duality of expansion and brutality established a pattern that would repeat throughout Russian leadership. Mikhail Gorbachev, 1985-1991. As the final leader of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev introduced revolutionary reforms that fundamentally altered the course of Russian and world history. His twin policies of perestroika, restructuring, and glasnost, openness, aimed to address decades of economic stagnation and political repression. Gorbachev received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1990 for easing Cold War tensions. His reforms unintentionally led to the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, ending the communist experiment after 7 decades. Nicholas I, 1825 to 1855. Nicholas I strengthened autocratic rule while expanding the Russian Empire into Central Asia and the Caucasus. His reign began with the suppression of the Decembrist revolt, establishing his reputation for maintaining order through force. Nicholas created the Third Section, a secret police organization that suppressed political dissent. His introduction of the official nationality doctrine, emphasizing orthodoxy, autocracy, and nationality, created an ideological framework that Russian leaders would reference for generations. Nicholas I's defeat in the Crimean War exposed Russia's military weaknesses, setting the stage for his son Alexander II's reforms. Alexander II, 1855 to 1881. Alexander II earned the title Alexander the Liberator for his 1861 emancipation of Russia's serfs, approximately 23 million people. This monumental reform transformed Russia's social structure and economy. Alexander II believed that the Russian defeat in the Crimean War in 1856 made the empire politically, socially, and militarily weak compared to other European countries and intended to implement large-scale reforms to strengthen Russia. His judicial reforms introduced legal representation and jury trials. Educational reforms granted universities autonomy, while military reforms modernized Russia's armed forces through universal conscription. Despite these progressive policies, Alexander II faced growing opposition, ultimately falling to assassination in 1881 after surviving 5 previous attempts. Elizabeth Petrovna, 1741 to 1762. Elizabeth Petrovna, daughter of Peter the Great, continued her father's policy of westernization during her 20-year reign. Under her leadership, Russia experienced a cultural renaissance, including the founding of Moscow University, St. Petersburg University, and the Academy of Arts. Historical records indicate Empress Elizabeth's reign is considered to be one of the calmest in Russian history, without any major natural disasters, social riots, or revolutions. Elizabeth supported pioneering scientist Mikhail Lomonosov, advancing Russian research in physics, geography, chemistry, and astronomy. Her passion for the arts transformed Russia's architectural landscape, commissioning over 20 Baroque palaces. Vladimir Putin, 2000 to present. Vladimir Putin inherited a Russia in economic chaos and political disarray after the turbulent post-Soviet 1990s. As Russia's longest-serving leader since Stalin, Putin has fundamentally reshaped the nation through centralization of power and economic recovery. Political analyst Shvangiradze explains, Vladimir Putin inherited from the previous president, Boris Yeltsin, a country that was in chaos, economic decline, and politically weak both internally and internationally. Soon after his presidency, Russia's economy grew dramatically, fueled by high oil prices, and the living conditions of its population improved. Putin's leadership has been characterized by military modernization, curtailing oligarch influence, and reasserting Russia internationally through interventions in Georgia and Ukraine. His governance model has re-established Russia as a global power, while drawing criticism for democratic backsliding. Vladimir Lenin, 1917 to 1924. Vladimir Lenin, founder of the Communist Party, led the October 1917 revolution that overthrew Russia's provisional government. As the first head of Soviet Russia and later the Soviet Union, Lenin implemented Marxism-Leninism, a revolutionary ideology that would influence global politics throughout the 20th century. Lenin believed in Marxism and further developed ideas of Marxism in Leninism. He believed World War I could transform into a Europe-wide proletarian revolution. Capitalism would be abolished and replaced by socialism. Under Lenin's leadership, the new communist regime nationalized banks and industries while redistributing land among peasants. These actions laid the foundation for the Soviet state that would emerge as a superpower in the decades following his death in 1924. Joseph Stalin, 1924 to 1953. Joseph Stalin transformed the Soviet Union from an agrarian society into an industrial and military superpower during his 29-year rule. Stalin's rapid industrialization and agricultural collectivization modernized the Soviet economy, albeit at tremendous human cost. Stalin concentrated on the expansion of the Soviet Union rather than the proletariat revolution. By the late 1920s, Stalin became the leader of the Union and started to execute his plan, which envisioned fast industrialization and collectivization of agriculture in the Soviet republics, consolidated by state control and police terror. The Soviet victory over Nazi Germany in World War II under Stalin's leadership established the USSR as a global power. Stalin's extension of communist control throughout Eastern Europe created the Soviet bloc, establishing the Cold War power structure that would define international relations for decades. However, Stalin's totalitarian methods, including the Gulag system, resulted in millions of deaths, leaving a complex legacy of advancement and atrocity. Peter the Great, 1682 to 1725. Peter the Great fundamentally transformed Russia during his 43-year reign, earning recognition as Russia's most powerful leader through military campaigns against Sweden, Estonia, Latvia, Finland, and Turkey. Peter secured vital ports on the Baltic and Azov Seas, enabling the creation of Russia's first navy and facilitating international trade. Historians note, Peter the Great engaged in several wars with Sweden, Estonia, Latvia, Finland, and Turkey, and managed to seize control over the ports of Azov and the Baltic Sea. These moves proved necessary to form the basis for establishing the Imperial Russian Navy, which ended the Swedish supremacy in the Baltic and catalyzed Russia's territorial expansion. Peter's most ambitious project was founding St. Petersburg in 1712, relocating the capital from Moscow to this new window to Europe. This physical repositioning symbolized Russia's conceptual shift toward European engagement. Peter's cultural revolution replaced medieval traditions with modern, scientific, and westernized institutions. In 1721, he formalized Russia's transformation by assuming the title Emperor of All Russia, signaling Russia's emergence as a European power and establishing a legacy that subsequent Russian leaders would measure themselves against for centuries.